Are you afraid of the dark? Do you fear being left alone in the black? The idea that something deep within it, something your eyes cannot see, is looking for you, searching for its next victim. Does your vision linger among the most hidden shadows in fear? See, today I wish to speak of just that, shadows. But not your mundane shadow made by simple light, no. A more sinister, darker, undead creature. They harbour hatred of both light and life, and seek nothing more than to destroy and spread. So you might have heard some slightly contradictory things about the shadow, as many like myself talk about how dangerous they are, a true threat to the civilized world, and yet many adventurers talk about how they are simple things to be rid of in a few seconds. Well, that's because both of them are true. See, I mean no disrespect when I speak of adventurers. I would be a hypocrite, I technically am one, but many of them are, shall I say, single-minded, not really that aware of the world around them, perhaps a bit out of touch. For them, or anyone else of an even semi-powerful nature, 1, 2, or even 12 shadows are almost nothing to you. But to a normal farmer or guard, they are quite the threat. But just their power alone is not the worst part. See, why this matters is how the shadow proliferates. For anyone the shadow kills will drop, and have their own shadow become another monster as well, letting them spread exponentially. Imagine the zombie or any other undead horde I've spoken of before. They spread a lot like that, as I've talked about. Well, this one is similar to them, but in a way that normal people can't even truly harm them, unless they get really lucky. So while a powerful party of adventurers can deal with them in seconds, a small village or even town can be obliterated, making them so much worse of a problem. But there's actually an interesting part of this dark conversion they do. See, it doesn't work on people who are evil. I know that sounds quite bizarre, but it's true. The shadow will even sense this and try to avoid them until they are the last targets left, in which they will finally kill them. See, the reason for this is actually quite simple. It's linked to something I've talked about before. There is a very powerful force known as negative energy. It's basically natural necrotic energy. Well, killing a good or even normal person will generate a lot of this energy to create a new shadow. But an evil person already has some of this energy naturally within themselves. The reason a new shadow cannot be created is because, simply put it, it's their energy. Once you generate your own energy, you have more control over it and store it within your own body. Or soul. We don't really know fully where it comes. Regardless, it's not being created upon your death, at least not enough to make a new shadow. Now, there are many evil beings powerful enough to convert this energy, so it really doesn't matter for most things. But as I said before, the shadow is actually quite a simple being. Really, the only thing that makes it such a threat, in my eyes at least, is the fact that they are incorporeal. See, zombies or even ghouls attack towns on a very common basis, but the guards have that situation handled. Sure, many will die, and it is obviously a tragedy, but the town will survive. Yet the same cannot be said for shadow attacks, since they lack most magical items or spellcasters. This is actually why most more magically inclined societies don't have this problem. Well, they do the usual amount, in fact, but they can actually deal with it a lot better since they have things that can actually harm the shadows. The usual amount, anyway. But with all that being said, I should get into the origins of the shadows, since there are actually many ways to create them, not including their self-proliferation. For a start, they are sometimes naturally created in the Shadowfell, or places that are corrupted by it. Or maybe if a land becomes so tainted by negative energy, it will leave a scar on the land. Regardless of which type of corruption the land has, if a non-evil person dies within these lands, they might create a shadow monster, who will typically, and somewhat fortunately, stay within the corruption. The issue comes from the fact that the lands that are corrupted like this tend to spread quite quickly and far. They are something that often needs to be dealt with. The other is sadly more common. See, necromancers can make them, and while they have control over them, they will not have control over whatever it makes. And so many young, foolish necromancers, well, they just simply don't know that. In fact, most town attacks are often caused by this very mistake, as some think this is the fastest way to make an undead army with as little magic as possible. Now, if their goal is to just cause chaos and destroy as much as possible as quickly as possible, then this is actually a pretty smart move. Now, there is something interesting about how the shadows attack, since they have a more sapping nature to their direct form of offense. See, the shadow actually has a quite unique ability, or rather it has a more unique manifestation of a more common one. For they drain their target like many other, they don't sap directly at one's physical health or life force like other undead, but rather at one's strength, making you weaker and decaying your very muscles. Why it targets this specifically or how is up to debate, but regardless, this makes them quite good at dealing with more magically inclined people who would normally be the perfect counter to the shadow if they get the drop on them. I'm saying this as a bit of a stereotype, but let's be honest, most magically inclined people don't work out. If you can make a wand pick something up, you're not going to pick it up yourself. It's another aspect that people tend to completely overlook about the shadow. Fortunately, this effect can be fully healed over a short amount of time, provided you get enough rest. Another scary power they have that's a bit more obvious is their ability to hide, almost perfectly, when in something else's shadow, as if they were a part of it themselves. Now, you would expect an evil instinct-only creature to use this ability not to its best, but you would be wrong. They have the instincts of any stalking predator sneaking through the brush, about to pounce on their prey. They're very good at remaining hidden for a while to get the perfect kill. And lastly, they have one more ability to be wary of. That's that they can go through places others can't. While they are incorporeal, they can't exactly go through objects like others can, and so they have to be unobstructed. But size is not a limitation. They can squeeze through almost anything, provided there is at least a slight hole. Perhaps something the size of a pencil, maybe a little smaller, that would allow them access. So if there's a wooden wall with a tiny bit of a hole in it, they can squeeze through. But one made of pure brick, not so much. Fortunately, they have one glaring weakness, and that's sunlight. Though it does not harm them directly, it makes them significantly weaker and slower, almost as if they were blinded, despite the fact they don't actually need to see anything. Magically induced sunlight would count as well, and given their more simple behaviors, you can even use this to trick and lure them away from something, since they will just fly away as fast as possible in any random direction. Some can even use this to trap them in things that have no holes at all, and take them away. The shadow is bizarre in its power. It's almost paradoxical in how much it can and can't do. In my mind, they're almost the perfect example of situational abilities. If in the right environment, it becomes unstoppable, and in another, destroyed in seconds. Almost every variable in an encounter with them could lead to them destroying you, or them fleeing faster than the wind. I remember a time in my younger adventure years when I was just starting out, where a necromancer had created a small army of shadows by destroying a town, and put them in sealed boxes in order to unleash them on adventurers like me. He had me and a few others trapped in a chamber, and started to give an overly dramatic speech and revealed his whole plan to us, like many villains are wont to do. But when he opened the boxes, shortly after saying something along the lines of, "But now you fools will die," the shadows instead turned on him, since he was much closer. They then sapped all of his strength from the weak necromancer, who was pathetic looking even by wizard standards, and he died remarkably quickly. After that, the shadows came for us, but then the cleric of our group, well, she let off one light spell, and they scattered in seconds, never to be seen again. We sat in silence for a moment, before the lot of us just bursted out laughing simultaneously. Which, looking back, it was not as funny as I remember. I suppose it was a more you had to be there sort of thing. But see, the shadow is never a focus to some people, even taking a side in their own story. But never forget, they could always become a real threat. And part of me still harbours fears and a bit of guilt that that small group of shadows went on to do something horrid. And I suppose I'll never know, and if I'm being honest, I don't want to. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. But, till next you meet, fellow traveller, have a great day.